G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here with another Pathfinder Kingmaker tutorial video. So I just recently did a basic Cleric build, and in that the game wants to recommend that you use spell focus as a feat. And I said you shouldn't do it. And I want to show you how spell focus works in divine spellcasting so that you can look at it yourself and decide whether you want to use it and where you want to use it. So first of all, let's go in and have a look at the feat, spell focus. Okay, so here is the spell focus feat, and it says you can choose any school of magic, and for the spells that you cast, they are more difficult to resist. So you add a +1 to the difficulty class of all save throws against spells from that school of magic that you select. You can gain this feat multiple times. It does not stack. Each time you take the field, it applies to a new school of magic. So what does that mean in regard to a cleric? Let's go and have a look at more information about magic in the game. Okay, so we are here in the encyclopedia, and you've got two types of spells. You've got arcane spells, which are used by bards, magi, sorcerers, and wizards. And you have divine spells. Clerics, druids, inquisitors, experienced paladins, and rangers can cast divine spells. Unlike arcane spells, divine spells draw power from a divine source. Clerics gain their power from deities or from divine focuses. The divine force of nature powers druids and ranger spells, and the divine forces of law and good power paladin spells. Divine spells tend to focus on healing and protection and are less flashy, destructive, and disruptive than arcane spells. So what you're going to find, as this says, is that more often than not, you're going to have spells of healing and protection, and healing and protection, and some summoning, as opposed to the more destructive and disruptive arcane spells. So let's have a look at what it says about the schools of magic. So there are 8 schools of magic, and I surprised myself that I did actually remember what they all were, but we're going to use their definitions rather than mine because they'll probably make a little bit more sense. So the first, well, not the first school, but the first alphabetically is Abduration. So Abduration are protective spells. They create physical or magical barriers. They negate magical or physical abilities. They harm trespassers, and they even banish the subject of spells to another plane of existence. Okay. From a clerical point of view, a lot of your spells are going to be protective spells. So you're going to have a lot of Abduration spells. But very few of those spells are actually used against an opponent. There are a couple that do dismiss and banish harmful beings, but most of the Abduration spells are used to protect yourself or your companions, in which case spell focus does nothing for you, okay? Because it's only if you do it offensively against someone who needs to do a save against your spell effects that spell focus actually helps you. The rest of the time, it does nothing. Conjuration. So it says there are 5 different conjurations. So there is calling, which calls beings from another plane. I don't know that there's any of those, well, except maybe undead, but they usually use necromancy. So there's calling, there's creation, which creates some object or effect. There's healing, which you have a lot of in this game. There is summoning, which brings manifestations of objects or creatures or some form of energy to you, which you also have a lot of as a cleric. And there's transportation, teleportation, which I don't think you have any of. So with Conjuration, the big thing here is that most of your Conjuration spells are going to be healing or summoning, right? And for those, it really doesn't help to have spell focus because they're all done on you. They're not There's no save throw against them. The one exception is that you can use those healing spells offensively against undead. That's the only time when spell focus will help you with Conjuration. But if you're not planning to do that, then it's not such a big deal. Divination. So divination spells enable you to learn secrets long forgotten, predict the future, find hidden things, foil deceptive spells, what have you. The problem here is that there's only a couple of divination spells for clerics, and I don't think any of them are really used offensively, in which case there is some sort of save throw required. So it's really not much of an advantage to take spell focus against divination as a cleric. Enchantments. They affect the minds of others, influencing and controlling their behavior. Loosely broken down into charms and compulsions. But I don't see there's a huge difference between those. There are a few enchantments as clerics. And of course, my favorite one is Hold Person. That is considered an enchantment. And while they're not part of the base, the core clerical spells, if you choose certain domains, you will have access to some of the power words. And so there's a bunch of spells called power word something. So there's power word stun, there's power word blind, I think there's power word silence, there's power word kill, things like that. I believe they're all enchantments, or all of the ones that I have seen as a cleric are all enchantments. So, and they're all very high level spells. I think they're level 7 or above in most cases. So if you feel like you want to have better hold person, and there are a couple of other enchantments throughout the game that you can use offensively, and you want to have all of your power words work really well if you've got them available, and you have to just check your domain when you choose it, then enchantments might be an option if you want to spend a feat on that. The next group, Evocation. Evocation spells manipulate magic energy or tap an unseen source of power to produce the desired effect. There's a little bit more there, but basically Evocation are all of your big energy damaging spells. Think Fireball. In the cleric's case, it's Flame Strike, and there's Lightning Storms or whatever it is. There's a few different spells there from the Evocation group. Pretty much every Evocation spell is done against an opponent, so Evocation is a good option. There are not a huge number of spells there, but if you want to do spell focus as a cleric and you plan on using all of those big, flashy, damaging spells, then Evocation is a good option. Illusion. Illusion spells deceive the senses or minds of others. They cause people to see things that are not there, not see things that are there, hear phantom noises, or remember things that never happened. Okay, sounds great. But in the base, in the core clerical spells, there are no illusion spells that I could find. There may be one or two in certain domains that have access to illusion spells, but for the most part, they're not there. So I would not recommend taking spell focus in illusion as a cleric, unless you see some spells that you are sure are illusion spells in your domain. Necromancy. Necromancy spells manipulate the power of death, unlife, and life force. Spells involving undead creatures make up a large part of this school. This is really the only group that I recommend definitely taking if you plan to use necromancy spells. If you're building a necromantic cleric, and there are several ways that you can do it, and you don't necessarily have to be evil because there is a god, or a goddess, I believe. Does it list the deities here? Yes. So Fairismer is the goddess of life and death, And you do not have to be, you can be neutral good, lawful neutral, neutral, chaotic neutral, or neutral evil. So you could be a neutral good necromantic cleric of Fairismer. You don't have to do necromantic spells, but you do have domains of death, healing, knowledge, repose, and water. So the death domain there, I'm assuming, will have some more necromantic spells available. But as a necromancer, or as necromancy spells go, there are a lot of necromancy spells available as a cleric. And the majority of them are spells that are going to harm your opponent, and it makes really very good sense to use spell focus in necromancy if you plan to use a lot of those spells. Transmutation. Transmutation spells change the properties of some creatures, things, or conditions. The majority of your buffing spells that you're going to have that, buff your strength, your speed, give you extra stealth, or give you anything like that, those spells are going to be transmutation. And I don't think there's any clerical spells that transmute offensively, that change your opponent in some way. They only change you or your companions. So there's no need for a saving throw. Okay, so if we just look at the 8 classes here, there's only really 3 that I recommend, with maybe a 4th. The main 3 are enchantment. If you want to use the power, if you have access to any or all of the power words, and you want to use the handful of other enchantments around that are useful, take enchanting. Evocation, if you want to use any of the powerful energy-based destructive spells that you do have as a cleric, spell focus in Evocation may help you. And lastly, if you're going to do anything with the necromancy spells, and there are a lot of them, then you would benefit from taking spell focus in necromancy. So what I'm going to do now is we'll just jump in, and I'll briefly go through the full spell book of available divine spells, and we'll just point out, here and there where the spells are, and also so that when you look at them yourself, you can see whether they are going to be useful or not. So let's do that. Okay, so here is a cleric spell book, and most times we can ignore the highlighted spell here because that's one that comes from a domain, but in this case, that's a base spell that anybody can use. You'll see that at first level, there is a lot of enchantments here, and with the exception of Unbreakable Heart, which is used against one of your companions, and Bless, which is used against your companions, Bane and Haze of Dreams are both offensive spells. So what you need to do to tell if the spell is going to be useful with spell focus is look under the save throw section, and if it shows that there is any save throw available, that means that having spell focus will help you, because it will increase the difficulty of that save throw for your opponent. Okay, so we can see here that there are a few abjuration spells. So Firebelly, Protection from Alignment, Remove Fear, Shield of Faith, Stunning Barrier. Now, strangely enough, even though I said abjuration spells really only protect you and they're not much good, Stunning Barrier and Firebelly both have a component to them. Because the Stunning Barrier can stun an opponent, they can save against that. But that's really the exception as far as most of the abjuration spells go. Conjuration, as I said, all of the healing spells, all of the summoning spells are all conjurations. Remove Sickness, another conjuration. But there's no need for save throws against them. And then Necromancy, Doom, Cause Fear, They're the only two on this. And inflict light wounds. All of those have a save throw associated with them. If you're going to use any of those, then it is helpful to have spell focus. We said hold person. That's an enchantment. One of the few that's used offensively. Definitely gets an advantage from that. Blessings of luck and resolved. It's against friendly creatures. No need for it. Divination, one of the few, find traps, one of the few divinations available. But here we've got a few more necromancy. We've got an inflict moderate wounds there. We've got bone shaker there. Lots of conjuration, summon animal, summon elemental, lesser restore, remove paralysis. None of those. Cure light wounds, delay poison, blessings of life and courage. None of those can be used offensively, so no benefits there. And we start to see some transmutation. Bear's endurance, eagle's splendor, effortless armor, owl's wisdom. They're all used to buff you or your companions. And then we're also seeing some evocation finally. Soundburst, the first of the evocation spells. Arrow of Law, another evocation spell, would see some advantage from spell focus. Again, more necromancy, blindness, bestow cursed, contagion, inflict serious wounds. Animate dead doesn't have any, so it doesn't get any advantage from it, but every other third level necromancy spell you definitely want. It would definitely have some advantage to having spell focus. Whether you want to take it or not is another story. There's this enchantment here, but again, it's only used against you. The conjurations are healing, delay poison, communal, summoning, and remove disease. None of those are really any good. Abjurations, resist energy, remove curse, protection from energy down there, and dispel magic. None of those have any advantage. And we have another evocation, searing light, and Orkron's aura, one of the evocations that actually buffs you rather than an opponent. So, Level 4, again, we're seeing more destructive. Well, this is one of the few non-destructive necromancy spells, Death Ward, but we've got one necromancy spell there. Pretty light on necromancy at level 4, but you've got conjurations of monsters and elementals, restoration, cure wounds, neutralize poison. None of those have any advantage. Divine Power, again, it's a personal one, no advantage for that. Shield of Dawn, no advantage for that. So this level 4, you really don't have much that is any use at all for having any sort of you've got a couple of transmutation here, but again, there is save throw on Crusader's Edge, and there is save throw there. They're very bizarre examples, but generally, and you've got the dismissal here, one of the abjuration spells, which actually does something powerful by dismissing extraplanar creatures. There is a save throw against that, but are you going to take spell focus just to get that? I don't know. Or just to, you wouldn't even take it just to, it doesn't give you that ability, but it just makes it more effective in this case. Level 5, we're back to a lot more spells here. I'm seeing a lot of transmutations. There is some saving throw against that one, but there isn't for that one. Righteous Might, there's no save throw there because it's doing to you. Again, no save throw there because it's doing to you. You've got some big evocations, Flame Strike. Cleanse is not a big evocation. It doesn't do damage, but it heals you. Sacred Nimbus, no spell, no protection there. Some conjurations. The Vine Trap is one of the few conjurations that will have a save throw there, but then you've got summonings. You've got Raise Dead, which doesn't have a save throw. Some transmutations, and then some big necromancy, Slay Living, Inflict Mass Wounds, Bone Shatter. So they are going to have some benefit there. Level 6, Blade Barrier, wonderful spell. One of the reasons why you would want to take Evocation. Cold Ice Strike again, another one. Hellfire Ray, even though it's evil, another good one. But then some Necromancy as well. We have Harm. We have Undead to Death, and there is a save against that. Plague Storm, there's a save against that. Inflict Mass Wounds, again, you're going to want that. Level 7, Power Word Blind, an enchantment. It'll help. But these evocations here, they will, but these are very specific evocations here. They don't always do a lot depending on the alignment of the creature that you're attacking. Another Necromancy there, which has a save. Destruction, Create Undead. Inflict Mass Wounds. Some more enchantment here, another enchantment here, which does have a save throw on it. And I think there was another... No, I'm thinking of a different level, apart from Power Word Blind. And some conjurations that really will not have any sort of saves on them. Power Word Stun here. Euphoric Tranquility, another good enchantment, which basically just sort of calms down all of your opponents. Some Abdurations, Holy Aura, and these do have some saves, but they're one of the few that do. Conjurations, again, Rift of Ruin, that does have a save throw. And then we've got some Necromancies, well, Evocations, the Firebolt, and the Stormbolt and the Firestorm. And then there's Death Clutch and Inflict Critical Wounds, more Necromancy. Finally, not a huge selection here. These Conjurations, nothing. This Transmutation, one of the few transmutations that does require save throws. Necromancy here, a big one, and another enchantment. And then if you've got them, things like Power Word Kill at this level. So as you can see, there are a smattering of things like Transmutation and Abjuration that would have some advantage, but in general, the main advantage comes from the schools of enchantment, evocation, and necromancy. My recommendation is really that unless you plan to play a necromancer, it's sort of 50-50 as to whether there's a really much of an advantage of taking in things like enchantment and evocation. You really have to be committed to then using those spells a lot and being very focused on them, because you're not going to get the advantage otherwise. You could spend 3 feats and get evocation, enchantment, and necromancy, and then just use spells as you like, and you do pretty well. But that's 3 feats that you could be putting into other things that might be more beneficial. So my recommendation is, really be careful before you pick a spell focus as a cleric, and really be aware of what domains you're picking, what deities you're picking, and be sure that you really want to use a lot of those spells in that class. If you're just going for a more rounded build where you just use spells from all over the place, then it might not be the best idea. But if you're going to focus a lot on enchanting your opponents, then use enchantment. If you're going to focus a lot on doing big flashy damaging spells, go evocation. If you're going to focus on necromancy, do that. And that's about it. So I hope this helps. I hope this explains the spell focus and the schools of magic as they apply to divine spellcasters. And stick around, and I'll see you for the next video. Thanks a lot.